Hi, this is Piero Giorgio, author of Survive the Economic Collapse. A question that sometimes my American friends and readers ask me is what is the difference between the gun laws in Europe compared to the United States? Well, of course, Europe, and I have to say to my friends that I'm from Switzerland, not from Sweden. Sometimes you seem to confuse the two countries. Sweden is much bigger, has about the same population, much better looking women, but they're fucking communists. whether in Switzerland, we are very similar in mindset to be freedom loving, and our constitution also allows us to have citizen soldiers that have the duty and responsibility to defend our country, to defend ourselves against aggression. In that sense, we're a bit similar to what the US Constitution meant to our Second Amendment and the right to carry and bear arms to defend one's freedom and one's nation. So that said, Europe is a very large set of countries. Not all countries are even part of the socialist Soviet European Union, as I like to call it in my book, the Union of European Republics and Kingdoms of Socialist Soviet Europe. But jokes aside, there's a lot of variance. And while there is a European law for the 27 countries who are part of the European Union, that law is quite restrictive in terms of how you can access firearms. It is, however, not the same, applied in the same way in every country. That's the point of such a big bureaucracy, is to make things extremely complicated and to cost a lot of money. The reality is that you have very, very different kind of laws, let's say from Portugal to Ireland to the UK to Italy to France. And so every country really has different laws. But in general, the reality is that you can access firearms. There are some restrictions, but you can. Why I say this is that often a lot of Europeans complain that to say, oh, our governments don't like citizens to be armed. That's correct. Therefore, and they continue, they say, therefore, we can't have guns, it's difficult to have firearms, we can't defend ourselves. And that's incorrect. Because if you look in the law, it's very clearly stated what is the process and what are the rights for citizens to arm themselves. And the rights are there. And of course, if you fit the criteria, and the criteria is quite wide. You have to be a citizen of the country. In some cases, you can be a resident of the country. And you can, you usually have to have a clean penal background. So that it means that you are not a convict, you are not a criminal, you haven't committed a criminal offense, especially a violent one. So if you fit those criteria, you can apply following certain rules, and yes, it is bureaucratic in some countries to apply for some firearms, and these can be handguns or they can be long guns. And different calibers are available, and some calibers are not available. So you have to really check country by country what is possible for you. And this goes from the quite liberal in some cases, and you'd be surprised, I know a lot of the French readers are surprised, but in fact, France, for example, or Italy, is fairly liberal. You can fairly easily access a hunting gun, a hunting rifle. It's fairly not that complicated to have a handgun to keep in your house and eventually protect yourself. Now, how the law applies to self-defense is another matter. But the accessing to weapons is fairly liberal. It is much less liberal in countries like the UK. And even in the UK, there are big differences between Northern Ireland, for example, where it's fairly liberal compared to England. And of course, it is also different in Wales or Scotland, for example. And certainly it is different in other countries as well. Now, there are countries who are not, thank God for them, part of the European Union. The most liberal of all is the country where I live in and where I'm citizen of, which is Switzerland, in which case the law is extremely extremely liberal, well, basically you can apply for a permit, and there is no reason they will not give you one unless you have a track record of criminal behavior, or if, of course, not a resident of the country. And you can access almost any type of gun. Unfortunately, you have to pay a little tax for each gun that you request to buy. And of course, it does vary from one state. We are based like the United States as a confederation of states. So each state has slightly different rules based on if it costs or not, and how many guns you can buy at the same time. But certainly, it's very liberal. You can ask for what they call exceptional permit for a full automatic rifle, for example. You can ask for collection right to have any type of weapon, even machine guns and things like that. So you can have suppressors based on such requests. You can have access to a lot of things as long as you follow the law and you're a responsible citizen. There is no problem. Of course, if you start to misbehave, if you start to carry the guns around in an improper way, and if you start to behave like a non-responsible person, well, the law will apply, and they will probably remove your rights to have your arms. So it is fairly liberal. Other countries which are not part of the EU are all the former, some of the former Eastern or Balkan region countries, and including and also some of the Nordic countries. Now, I wanted to say Finland, which is part of the EU, has a fairly liberal weapon law because, like Switzerland, it is a country which has had a long culture of rifle ownership for defense, especially in the north, against wolves, against bears, and so on. And so there is a hunting tradition, and you can find the same in Serbia, which has a very liberal gun law. Bosnia-Herzegovina also. Romania is much more tight, but a lot of people in the countryside still have hunting rifles and hunting guns. And you do find also fairly liberal law in former Soviet Union. What is really important for everyone in Europe, in the European continent, is that you have to follow the law. You don't want to become a criminal by buying weapons on the black market. And there are a lot of weapons on the black market, especially since the Balkan Wars in the 90s, and especially now since the United States has destroyed the Middle East. You have a lot of weapons from Libya, from Syria, from Iraq, flooding the black markets. And it's mostly Soviet-style weapons, so AKs, pistols, harder to find ammunition, but definitely you have weapons on the black market. And I always advise to people, do not buy those. Always follow the law. Always follow the rules in terms of how you can acquire your weapons. You do not want to fall, because they will find the guy who buys his first weapon on the black market. You are not trained to be a mafia guy. You are not trained to be a black market guy. You will get caught. They will give you to the police because they need to give people to the police to continue their black market things. Now, the problem, of course, is that criminals don't have your problem, that they don't care. They are part of that ecosystem, and they will find weapons. So you do find more and more in Europe criminals with assault rifles like AK-47s, AK-74s, CZ-58s, and the such. So you will find more and more of that going around. That said, as we know, when you have proper training in firearms manipulation and usage and tactical training, you know that a hunting shotgun, a hunting gun, even, of course, a handgun or a basic rifle is way enough to defend yourself against aggression in your house, on your property, as long as you follow properly the law. And of course, if you study what are the steps to be perfectly clean in case you have to, unfortunately, it's always an unfortunate moment, to use your firearms against aggression. So Europe is not as liberal as the United States, as most states in the United States, at least. Europe is very different. You have extremely liberal states like Switzerland, and I'm very grateful to be living in my country for that as well, to much more strict countries like the UK. And you should note that in the UK, since they banned or severely restricted firearms crime has decreased, but overall crime has exploded up. So if you look really at the statistics, you find that there is a lot more aggression with knives, with clubs, with hammers, with everything. Sweden has the same problem because clearly citizens are less able to defend themselves. So always think that if you want to have a firearm, think responsibility, think readiness in your mind and readiness in your body, get training. And I really advise you, at least for the time being, there is still the law, follow the law. This is Piero San Giorgio. If you like this video, please share it, and of course, subscribe to my YouTube channel or Facebook. Take care.